What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a loaded pod talking about Super Mario Brothers movie, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's Air, new film out in theaters on Prime, as well as new music from Ray Sremmurd, K-pop rookie group IVE, Ellie Goulding, and also my reaction to all the Star Wars Celebration 2023 news, including new movie announcements. So, wide range of stuff there. But make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod, check the description below. Get the pod wherever you can get it. All the best of 2023 Spotify playlists for the best songs of the year. And yeah, let me know what's good in the comments below. All right, let's get into it. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here reacting to the news out of Star Wars Celebration 2023 that we're getting 3 new Star Wars movies. Stop me if you heard this before, but Lucasfilm announced more Star Wars movies, although I have a feeling that these are more real projects than some of the past announcements. I'm going to get into all that. So there's a lot to really parse here. So at Star Wars Celebration 2023 in Europe, a lot came out at the Lucasfilm panel, and the big headline is these 3 new movies. So just to hit it real quick, and we'll just dive into all of these. So the 3 movies are a film from James Mangold about the dawn of the Jedi. This would be the earliest period in the Star Wars timeline that's existed in Legends or now in canon. James Mangold, of course, great director. Ford vs. Ferrari is a banger, but also familiar with Lucasfilm because he just directed Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Indiana Jones 5, coming out this summer. Pretty telling hire that Lucasfilm grabbed someone who's an A-lister, very in-demand director, very capable director, but also someone with blockbuster experience and also experience with Lucasfilm. Think about Tony Gilroy getting to make Andor because Lucasfilm was comfortable with him after he saved Rogue One for them. Familiar vibes, and I think it's a good thing to feel good about, as a Star Wars fan, because Lucasfilm will let James Mangold cook, and also this is a time frame that is untapped potential and is less constrained by, the Skywalker saga, for example. So that's an exciting thing for sure. The other film, or second film of the 3, would be Dave Filoni directing a live-action Star Wars movie for the first time. Of course, Dave Filoni coming up with Star Wars The Clone Wars, going into live action, helping shepherd the Mandalorian in the Book of Boba Fett and all that to the front for Disney Plus. He's going to conclude the Mandalorian story in film form. Pretty exciting. I'm not shocked about this. I think this is a pretty smart idea. Honestly, to really capitalize on the Mandalorian story, which has been the most consistent through line in terms of serialized Star Wars storytelling we've got in the last few years. Star Wars has been running on TV as the movies have not launched since Rise of Skywalker came out, 3.5 years ago at this point. Having the Mandalorian wrap up on the big screen, I think, is really exciting. That's really cool. Also, it's a great look for Lucasfilm to give Dave Filoni this job. He's definitely earned it. It's really exciting and I think really just and really cool. It's not a surprise that The Mandalorian will be coming to an end at some point, and I think this is a really cool way to build people up and build audience anticipation for a journey they've been on, at the Star Wars TV screens, bringing that to the movies. I think this is really cool. And then the third film would be a movie we've known about. We just didn't really know what it was about. This would be the movie that Damon Lindelof recently left and Stephen Knight was recently brought on to write, being directed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, who directed Miss Marvel for Disney, among other things. This film is, in fact, a sequel to the Star Wars sequel trilogy. This is a sequel to, at least timeline, sequence-wise, a sequel to Rise of Skywalker. Rey is back. Daisy Ridley is back. They brought her out at Star Wars Celebration. They say this is going to take place, several years after Rise of Skywalker as Rey rebuilds the Jedi Order, the new Jedi Order. That's really cool. I think there's a lot of, I think just kind of, I don't want to say resentment, but there's a lot of just general angst about how the sequel trilogy went, whether you were pro Last Jedi, you were anti Last Jedi. I think everyone kind of came to agreement that no matter what side of the coin you were on, the lack of a coherent plan really detracted from the satisfaction that you get from watching that trilogy in full. A new movie with Rey, and perhaps some other familiar faces as well, that wouldn't shock me either. a new movie with Rey can at least iron out some of those gripes many of us have and make us feel better about where that Star Wars timeline was and, set us up for future success. I also would not be shocked if Grogu, Baby Yoda, our guy from The Mandalorian, would not be shocked if we saw Grogu, who would be older in this part of the timeline. I would not be shocked to see Grogu meet up with Rey. In fact, I would bank on that. And that would be really exciting, I think, for fans and almost like a get out of jail free card for Lucasfilm to use the overwhelming popularity of Grogu to kind of rehabilitate the sequel trilogy in terms of the broad sense. Obviously, there's plenty of things that I still like about the sequel trilogy, and I like Daisy Ridley a lot. I think she's really good as Rey. The issues with the film has nothing to do with her, and using Grogu to kind of get people back, I think would be really smart. Whether that happens in the first movie with Rey or they make subsequent ones, who can say? I think it is notable that you have 3 Star Wars movies announced at 3 different parts in the timeline. It's not a traditional trilogy announcement. That is interesting. It's also kind of in line with how Lucasfilm has been moving, as best we've known. They've been taking pitches, working on stuff, trying to make good ideas. And, we thought the Patty Jenkins Rogue Squadron movie was going to be an example of this. Obviously, that fell through. Kevin Feige produced film is not happening. No word of the Taika Waititi film at all at Celebration. You have to imagine that has been backburner now as well. Of course, the Rian Johnson trilogy. They keep saying all the right things, but if that is to happen, it's still legions of time in the future because Rian Johnson's attached contractually to Netflix and Knives Out franchise for a little bit still. So this is where we're at for now. And I think you have a safe choice in culminating with The Mandalorian. You have a logical, kind of smart choice for the long-term future, which would be using Rey and continuing that forward momentum of your Star Wars storytelling timeline. And then you have, kind of the out there inspired choice, which would be doing something in basically a complete untapped sandbox, which is the Dawn of the Jedi film from Mangled. It's not dissimilar to how they're moving on TV as well. The Acolyte coming out in 2024 from Leslie Headland, set in the High Republic era, kind of similar to the Dawn of Jedi approach in that it's very much unfamiliar to most people, and thus there's a lot of room for new storytelling approaches. So I feel good about these announcements. Obviously, we need to wait and see. We need to make sure that these movies happen again. Like Lucasfilm has gone through so many directors, gone through so many projects. We got to see something get done. You can probably guess when these movies are going to start to come out because they're probably, I would assume, alternate the release years between these Star Wars movies and the upcoming Avatar sequels. They would not release both these movies, at the same time. Certainly not both in the same December window that they seem to like to release in. So it's going to be a minute, but I'm feeling pretty good about these. We got confirmation that Andor season 2 will come back in August 2024. We knew it'd be 2024 August, so we're getting there. Acolyte sometime in 2024. Skeleton Crew series with Jude Law is also coming out end of this year, probably December-ish time, similar to how Book of Boba Fett came out, I would guess. And Ahsoka, a little bit earlier than expected. We got the trailer. Ahsoka coming in August. Very exciting. And of course, The Mandalorian has a few more episodes to go right now. So it's probably the clearest picture we've had of near-term Star Wars storytelling in quite some time. But again, the Lucasfilm caveats apply. We got to see them really commit to a direction and commit to creatives to have confidence in the plan coming to fruition. But the fact that they brought Daisy Ridley out there on stage, they announced a Mandalorian film, I would be quite shocked if those things don't happen. Did the James Mangold movies fall through? It certainly could. But Mangold has worked with Lucasfilm just recently with Indy, as I said, so I'm feeling pretty good about that one happening too. So it's the best I've felt in a while in terms of confidence in the future projects. So a lot of wait and see, of course. Time needs to pass for these things to get made. But I mean, how are you feeling about these announcements? Let me know. I I would not be shocked if there's a lot of people saying "Oh, I would rather have watched Luke rebuild the Jedi Order and that had been the sequel trilogy." Totally get it. I understand. You can read the books, the Legends books go into all that. At least you have that. But hey, for what we got, I'm feeling decent about this. But let me know how you feeling about it. And for more Star Wars movie reviews, news reactions, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of IVE's debut album, IVE. New K-pop group, debuted at the end of 2021, and they had a monster 2022, like a few other rookie groups, and they're really part of this new wave of female K-pop groups. IVE and La Seraphim and New Jeans. The rookie ladies have been all the rage in K-pop the last, year and a half at this point, and IVE have been huge chart toppers in their own right. They only had released, I believe, 6, 7 songs to this point before this full-length album has come out. But among those songs, Afterlife and then Love Dive, they just had some massive, big anthemic singles that have really resonated and really put this group, I think, front and center in terms of people being excited about them. And what I find particularly interesting about IVE is just how much success they've found despite being signed to Starship Entertainment, a much smaller K-pop company. They are not signed to one of the big four K-pop labels, yet they've had monster hits, #1 hits in Asia. That is really no small feat, and really quite impressive considering the big competition they've been going up against in terms of their peers. And now we have this full length IVE, and I really like the presentation of this group in terms of like the brand and the confidence in the name and how they kind of put that forward. I think it's pretty effective because they're pretty consistent with it. But honestly, I thought IVE was really quite enjoyable. I think there's just a lot of like banger songs on this, to be blunt. Starting right off, you have Blue Blood. Uh, the drum line on that, almost gives you like that processional, almost like a march feeling. I think it starts off quite well. And in general, I think Starship, the team around IVE, like they really have a handle on what kind of production these young women sound good on, because I think they're always really matching their beats quite well, and it starts off with Blue Blood. Track 2, though, they don't waste any time. I Am. That is an anthemic, big maximalist pop banger, similar to how Afterlife, and Love Dive and 11, make you feel the past IVE bangers. I Am is the next one. You got the music video already. It has these big notes on the chorus, very anthemic. The chorus kind of builds up, and you get these long vocal notes, kick drums, very consistent as well. And I think for a group, IVE haven't always been as, and again, they're brand new. They only had a few songs out to this point, but they hadn't been super, I think, vocally experimental yet. They hadn't really dived into that, singing bag per se. It had been much more, I think, smooth vocals for these big anthemic songs. It's kind of a cool combination. But a song like I Am, I think the bigger singing notes really stand out in terms of contrasting to the previous work to this point. So that one stood out to me. The third song, Kitsch, which is with the lead single here, I can't help but like the acknowledgement of like 90s Kish. It's almost like a antecedent to New Jeans being so uh, openly inspired by like Y2K production and fashion and things like that. So kind of an interesting juxtaposition there in terms of one of their peer groups. Heroin, I thought the na 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 like breakdown part was incredibly catchy. Mine, I thought that song was just okay, but even though it was just okay, like it was still pretty darn catchy. I think like this group, it's just the song structures are just incredibly tight. Not Your Girl, that was a really big banger as well, very similar to After. Like for me, I like that one quite a bit. Huge production there. Hypnosis, man, that song's a bop, but that one also has like a guitar kind of jumping in and really quite rips. And then there's a bit of rap flow on there. You don't get a ton of hip hop from IVE to this point. I think some K-pop groups will almost like ham-fistedly have a rapper role on a lot of their songs, and like one of their members is like made into a rapper per like the requirements of making K-pop music. IVE to this point hasn't had a whole lot of rapping in their songs, but it actually stood out to me in a positive way on Hypnosis. Perhaps that's just I hadn't heard that much before, but it actually sounded pretty intentional, and I thought it was pretty good. Similarly on Cherish, which overall has I think a much more of a throwback like 90s R&B vibe to it. Tempo was incredibly choice, loved it, and the rap flow again, it's light hip hop, again it's overall like R&B vibe, but the rap flow on it I thought was quite capable again. So shout out IVE for finding, and the team for finding ways to fit in, some hip hop influence and some hip hop performance into this music, because I think it has worked well on this record here. Uh, Shine With Me, the closer. I think it's an incredibly strong closer. I don't often feel this way about K-pop closers, but man, I think the strings and the production, like the orchestral nature to it, really I think was fitting as a way to wrap that song, wrap the record up. It sounded really great. And just one other note: some of the IVE members have already been co-writing songs. There's co-writing credits on this record already, as a great sign for their future success and what kind of artists these women are. So I'm quite enthusiastic about this group. Obviously, they have huge competition in terms of other fourth gen K-pop groups, people they debuted in right alongside. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of excitement. But I think that's what makes it so fun, is that there's so many intriguing and fully formed, unique groups already in terms of brand new K-pop groups. So IVE is one of those, in a sense, leading the way in terms of hit making. Very exciting. And again, shouts off to them for doing this on a small label, which is incredibly impressive. But yeah, let me know, how'd you feel about the IVE debut album, IVE? Did you like this more or less compared to those previous hits? And for more K-pop reviews, more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Ellie Goulding's fifth album, Higher Than Heaven. Yes, the British pop star is back. Only a 3-year wait between albums this time. It had been a 5-year wait between the last album we got in 2020. So Ellie's back a little bit sooner. And I think this is a very interesting time to be getting an Ellie Goulding album, because, of course, she has a monster hit out right now with Calvin Harris, brand new song from this year, Miracle, which is really big worldwide and incredibly big specifically in the UK. And that song is not found on this new Ellie Goulding album, which I think is uh, almost like commendable, in the sense that Ellie isn't tacking on the big hit onto this new record of hers. And Higher Than Heaven, Ellie Goulding has been proudly repeating a lot that this is her, quote, least personal album to date. But she's quite proud of that fact and thinks this is her best record. And I have to say, I really enjoyed Higher Than Heaven a lot more than I certainly expected to. Ellie Goulding, female pop star in her mid 30s. Unfortunately, the times we live in, the music industry that we know, not always is kind to aging pop stars, especially the female ones, right? I don't know how many people are necessarily checking for the next Ellie Goulding record, but I hope people do, because I think this is a really engaging record, and she certainly deserves, I think, a lot of attention on this. Whether she gets it or not, I don't know. It's not necessarily going to be fair if it goes that way, but it wouldn't also shock us, right? Higher Than Heaven, I think, is honestly just really consistent. It's Ellie really leaning into that electro pop vibe that she's made her name on, made her career on, right? Think back to the biggest hits like Lights and Burn, and her previous Calvin Harris collaboration, Need Your Love. Ellie Goulding is right at home with this kind of production style. And she decided on Higher Than Heaven to just make an album full of that. Great idea, in my opinion, because I think it sounds great. Right off the bat, track 1, Midnight Dreams, groovy as hell. She sounds so good. I don't necessarily need Ellie Goulding to get super in the weeds with stuff. Like she said, she's not getting too deep, but I think it's fine because it's a great match between her vocals. She's not the most amazing singer in the world, but she knows what kind of vocalist she is, and she knows that she sounds good on this type of beat. And yeah, I think it's a great match. Great. I think just a great, like, form of vision, honestly, to meld these vocals onto this style of music. Midnight Dreams, super groovy. Right after that, track 2, Cure for Love, really high tempo song once again, has these big breakdowns. I think she's just really at home on this kind of music. Track 4, Like a Savior, almost a bit of a house vibe, but again, like this high tempo music, she just sounds so at home on. She sounds so good on Easy Lover, featuring Big Sean. Perhaps a bit of a random feature pull at first glance. There was a lot of features on the last album, though, so it's not the most out there thing there. Big Sean sounds fine, but Easy Lover, again, like this drum production just really speaks to me. And lyrically, actually, Julia Michaels is a co-writer on this, so perhaps this is one of the ones that might engage people the most on a writing perspective. But again, I don't think that's the appeal of this album. Why you should be going in, just really just be here to sit with these vibes, man. Because I think her vocals are still incredibly smooth, but she almost like gets livened up by these kind of beats. Uh, yeah, keeping it going. How long? Another one I just quite enjoyed. Uh, right after that, Temptation. You get some synths popping in really for the first time on the record, sound good, and the drum line again just really sticks with you. Um, Intuition, I think the chorus from Ellie sounds tremendous, but again, this drum tempo is really great. Just again loving the vibe, you know. So overall, I would say for a pop star releasing a fifth record, her popularity as a soloist seemingly has began to wane. It's a really impressive effort. I'm quite pleased with this. I hope it gets the attention it does outside the UK. She's always been a bigger artist in the UK than she has been in the US. I think it's definitely deserving of this because this is the kind of music that you would think would at least find a home on playlisting and get programmed and draw streams that way, right? Maybe if people aren't necessarily connecting to Ellie Goulding, the artist, they probably would connect with this kind of music because it's not super dissimilar to a lot of other stuff that finds success. I think it's better than a lot of that stuff too. It's just a matter of fact of whether she and everything that goes into that kind of feat, label promotion and distribution and things, whether this music can get in front of enough people. Because I think people that listen to this will quite enjoy it. Um, like I said, bit commendable to not tack on the Calvin Harris collaboration to this album to use that to juice streams and get attention. It's really admirable to not quote sell out, even though it's a song you made, you earned that just as much as Calvin Harris did in terms of that being a hit. But alas, she didn't do that. So I hope Higher Than Heaven can attract people because I think on its own merits, it's a really catchy, fun listen. It's a long album; it's almost 50 minutes, but um, I just quite enjoyed most of it. So I would recommend people check it out. But let me know, how'd you feel about Ellie Goulding's album? Did it surprise you the way it surprised me? And for more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Ray Sremmurd's fourth album, Srem for Life. Yes, Ray Sremmurd, Sway Lee, and Slim Jimmy, the brothers, they're back. First album since 2018. It's been so long. We've been waiting so long for another Ray Sremmurd album. Obviously, both these guys have been doing solo work, never broken up by any means, but they've been, featuring other people's songs, doing their thing. But I've been really waiting for a new Ray Sremmurd album. It's been such a long time, and I really love their discography to this point. I think they're a great duo and have just a ton of certified bangers to their name at this point. And I was really hoping they could come back and do more of the same. And I'm very happy to say that they did. Srem Life 4, Srem for Life, Srem Life 4, whatever you want to call it, is good. It's a good record. I'm really happy about it. And I had a lot of reservations about this album that, had me waiting with bated breath at least a little bit. And that would really just start with Sway Lee. Sway Lee is very popular as a soloist at this time, especially as a featured guest. People probably know this at this point, but Sunflower, Post Malone, is the sixth most stream song on Spotify, 2.6 billion streams. And Unforgettable, Sway Lee's feature on the French Montana song, is the 81st most streamed song on Spotify with 1.6 billion streams. Since those songs have come out, and they're both pretty old at this point, Sway Lee has done a lot of similar types of features. He hasn't been too much of a rapper. And what I was worried about with a new Ray Sremmurd album would be that Sway perhaps would really go fully into the singing lane and leave a lot of the hip hop stuff behind. And I was a bit worried about that because my favorite Sway Lee is rapping Sway. I think that's him at his absolute best. And he has, those singing chops. He has the melodic hip hop ability that he can do sing rap, and it's really great. But I was just worried that he would leave the rap part of that behind. And thankfully, he really didn't on this album, which I was quite happy about. Um, and I mean, just going right into it, going through this track list, it's pretty robust 14 songs, 48 minutes. I think a bunch of these songs, and also what's really nice about this is there's a bunch of loose singles that Ray Sremmurd had put out over the past, 6 months or so. Not all of them are here. So they really put a lot of thought, I think, to this full track list, which I like, because I didn't love all those singles. So it's nice to see them really, I think, kind of lean into it and I think deliver a really, I think, engaging album where Sway and Jimmy both sound, I think, very energetic, but also they kind of switch up their flows and their delivery styles quite a bit. Jimmy leaning into a bit of the melodic hip hop as well. Obviously that was not where he started as a rapper at all. And Sway, of course, I think differentiating it just enough for me that I wasn't, too worried about some of my reservations. So, but just kind of going into this, I think the first song, Origami Hotties, is pretty fun, really solid. I like that one. And then before you know it, though, you get track 4, Not So Bad, Lean's Gone Cold. And that is a song where Sway Lee, it's really a Sway song, Sway interpolates Dido's Thank You, which is, of course, famously the sample to Eminem's Stan. And Sway, I think, is just so talented that he can really, like, sing the Dido stuff more or less, but obviously switch up those lyrics. And it sounds so good, and it's basically like a rework of Dido's Thank You, and it sounds really tremendous. And that's just something that only someone like Sway Lee can really pull off. I think it's really great. Ben Uni's, I love the piano key on that, but I think the lyrically that's like kind of obviously like TikTok bait. Anything that's like super directional about how to move, like you can tell that's for a TikTok challenge. But hey, I would not be mad if that song went viral on TikTok because hey, uh, they kind of invented this, Ray Shremmurd, with the Black Beatles mannequin challenge, which predated TikTok. So they kind of earned it. And of course, they've had a lot of TikTok success since then with some of their older songs, like Come Get Her, for example, kind of blew up on TikTok a few years back. So if Ben Uni's is kind of blatant TikTok bait, I don't mind. It's okay. Right after that, though, I think is probably the best song on the album to me, which would be Activate featuring Future. Man, that song is so fucking fire. Sway sounds incredible. He switches up his flow on this a lot. Jimmy's great. Even Future, who you don't really need on the song, but Future sounds really good too, fits right in. I think that's my favorite song. Right after that, you have Flaunt It Cheap, which I think is quite good as well. YMCA, I think Sway's flow is incredible on that. Something I'm Not, probably the best example of Sway giving you that melodic, like sung rap. He's again sounds great on that, and I mean, this is really just a great showcase for Sway, his talent. And Jimmy also, throughout all of this, he's really able to keep up and match Sway. If you think back on Srem 3 in 2018, obviously that was a triple disc album, Ray Shremmurd album, as well as a Jimmy solo and a Sway solo. It's quite clear to me that these guys are just better together, and they've been able to grow together and give you a lot more to their music. Like I said, I really love rapping Sway the most. I'm thinking of like Set the Roof off Strem Life too, like Sway like really going hard with the rapping, stuff like No Type, obviously, the hallmarks of the past. You don't really get him going like that hard rapping on Strem for a Life. And he hasn't really done that in a long time anyway. Like even like the best songs off Strength Life 3, like Power Glide, for example, he's not going like that hard. Not He just doesn't do that anymore. So I've kind of let that go as like what I expect. But he still, I think, raps enough on this album to keep me happy. And Jimmy, like I said, just has continued to get better with every single release and is quite, I think, impressive artist in his own right. He just has a lot of charisma and a lot of like funny lines. Like I love Jimmy. So yeah, I'm just quite pleased with Strem for Life. I really was hoping this would be good, and it was. I would love them to go on their own headlining tour. If you look at the history of Ray Shremmurd concert tours, they've largely gone on tour in support of other bigger acts and have like barely done any of their own headlining. I would love to see them headline their own show. I saw them at a festival way back in 2018, so it's been a minute, but yeah, rooting for that because I think they earn it. They deserve it. So Strum for Life, total success. I'm just so happy Ray Shremmurd's back, and I hope the next album isn't a 5-year wait as well. But let me know how'd you feel about the new Ray Shremmurd album, and let me know. For more hip hop reviews, music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Beef, the new limited series out in full on Netflix from Lee Sung Jin. I was not familiar with Lee Sung Jin's work. He's a long-time staff writer in the comedy space. This is his first show he's created. But I was, of course, familiar with the two leads of this series. That would be Ali Wong and Steven Yeun. And I think Beef is spectacular. Certainly the biggest TV surprise in the year so far. Completely blew me away. Exceeded every expectation. I think this is a series that never does what you expect it to do and never becomes the show you expect it to be. And on top of that, it has spectacular writing, really rich themes, excellent premise to start you off, and of course, tremendous acting. So, Beef, really my highest possible recommendation for a series. I'm going to get into all that. I'm going to spoil what happens in this 10 episode limited series, but let me just say again, love Beef. If you haven't seen it yet, watch later, bookmark this, come back, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think once you did. But yeah, I think Beef is tremendous. So, what I think, starting you off with Beef, right? Yeah, you have this premise, which is super high concept, really smart. It's two people get in a road rage incident, and they both snap equally. Of course, Ali Wong and Stephen Yeun are these two people. You have Stephen Yeun is Danny Cho, who's kind of like a grinding, blue collar, handyman contractor type guy, a bit down on his luck, trying to find his way in the world. And Ali Wong plays Amy Lau, who is a small business owner, very successful, wealthy woman in the process of selling her company to a bigger company and getting, like rich. And they have a road rage incident starting at a department store, like Home Depot-esque store parking lot. And there's a bit of road rage chase. Things really spiral from there, and they separate. And you think, oh, is this going to be a movie or a series a story where this road rage incident, will they get caught by the neighbors? Will one of them go against the other? What's going to happen? And it very quickly becomes so much bigger than being about this road rage incident. It's actually more about how these two people, Danny and Amy, it's really about how Danny and Amy have been these self-destructive people in their own lives. And when they chance encountered each other, they self-combusted because they both have unhappiness in their lives, and they feel resentment towards the world and society and things like that. And I think it's really just impressive how Beef is able to wield, I think, these really weighty themes and bring you in. And like I said, the show doesn't do what you expect it to do, because once you get into that, okay, it's a bit deeper than just the road rage show. However, Beef keeps adding characters and stories and supporting stories and B plots to the series that don't feel superfluous at all, but actually enrich your understanding of Beef in that core story. And I think Beef, just as a story, really builds and has a really beautiful ending, and really where it ends up in terms of what happens in the final episode, and how metaphysical some of that stuff is. Definitely, you would not have seen that coming watching the first few episodes. But again, I think everything is super earned with that. I think just as we start to meet more people in the lives of Danny and Amy, like, the show really blossoms. A big person, of course, would be Joseph Lee, who's an actor I'm not super familiar with. I thought he was great, though. He plays George, Amy's husband. And you learn that actually Amy has been the one grinding her whole life, finding successful business, and she's the one supporting her stay-at-home husband, who is an artist. And their relationship, we learn, is more strained than perhaps people think it should be. They have everything seemingly going for them in their lives, but Amy isn't home nearly as much to take care of their daughter Junie. George is, and there is unhappiness. There's strife there. Danny is living with his younger brother, his younger brother Paul, played by Young Mazzino, an actor I'm also unfamiliar with. He seems pretty new, and his younger brother doesn't have the same ambition and personal drive to find success and make success for oneself, at least the way Danny does, at least the way Danny sees it, sees how you do that sort of thing. It's quite interesting. I think Korean culture is a big aspect of this, particularly on the Danny side of things. And Danny finding his way back into the Korean community and the church that he had become ostracized from, as we learn more about what happened to Danny's parents during the course of the recent past with the series. I think it's really added on in a nice way. Another important figure in the series would be Danny and Paul's cousin, Isaac, played by Dave Cho. Dave Cho, I knew him as an artist, kind of a um, eccentric figure. He does a lot of stuff in media, but really known for being an artist and I guess a writer or a expressing himself in a in that medium. I never really seen him act, certainly not dramatically act, and he definitely has a comedic uh, side to his character. But I was quite impressed with this performance from him. Um, Isaac is the older cousin of Paul and Danny, but Isaac, a bit seedier fellow. He's kind of operating on the edges of the law, export import business, having connections across LA, hustling, but you may be cutting some corners, but willing to help out Danny and Paul as well, keep it in the family. And you learn more about Isaac's relationship to the rest of the family as the show goes. Overall, again, really impressed with Dave Cho, and the character's quite fun to be with for sure. The kid, Junie, uh, uh, Amy and George's kid, I think she's like really great. Honestly, like child performances, of course, incredibly hit or miss, but really good kid. Good job. um, again, like later on, they add more layers to it. We eventually meet George's mother, Fumi, and we learn actually little bits about her life and her expectations for her son and her son's marriage and what she is perhaps projecting onto that marriage and finding use in this marriage between her son and her son's wife and how Amy learns about that. There's a lot of kind of like 6 degrees of separation things in terms of how characters meet one another in terms of these two sides of our story here. How Amy meets Danny's brother Paul, I think, is quite interesting, and where all of that goes is quite compelling. How Danny meets George with a fake identity, Zane, I think, is quite compelling. Layer after layer gets added to this series, and it keeps building up, and all of that's really fun in terms of who has the upper hand one on the other as the beef simmers, then comes back to a boil. But along the way, the I think dramatic uh, tension really ratchets up as we really kind of get into what these characters, our lead characters, feel about in terms of finding purpose and meaning in their lives. They're very different lives, but they perhaps have a similar issue in terms of finding that kind of inner peace, but also like that purpose. You know, um, as it gets there, these characters also get worse. You take your time rooting for each character in the beef and just overall, we spend so much time with them and we really learn about their relationships and their personal struggles, and everything's so finely written and so richly drawn that you're really connected to these characters. And then towards the end of the series, they get exposed as even perhaps more villainous than they ever had been before. It's like, oh, they may just be terrible people to deal with, and maybe you can't relate to some of their issues and their struggles, right? These self-defeating people have done more than that, though. They have some real heinous things they've done, whether it's what happens between Amy and George's marriage, or things you learn about Danny and Paul's past, the brothers' past, in terms of what Danny may have done. Um, you really have a hard time, I think, not even picking a side, but really like sympathizing with that character. And I think it's really impressive when shows can make you so connected to the journey that a character is on, and then throw something heinous right in your face and kind of dare you to keep rooting for them, because you can't. You do not take their side in this. It's universal when you see what happens. And that's what's so impressive about the series. It really ratchets up towards the end there. With the fire and the robbery attempt, the kidnapping, the deaths, really picks up. And then episode 10, almost Lynchian in a sense, right? Starting off with these crows, which had previously been referenced, these birds talking to oneself. And then Amy and Danny basically tripping off toxic berries you're not supposed to eat, as we all know as growing up. Um, it kind of ends in a place you don't necessarily expect it to, but really, I think the back half really hones in on those themes. I think it's a really strong LA movie as well. Amy's all up in the Calabasas Hills, and Danny spending some time in Orange County, connecting back with the Korean community he had been ostracized from. All that's quite fun. The basketball scene at the Korean church is really enjoyable. Um, the Vegas episode 4, when Danny and Isaac go to track down Paul, who stole the truck, Danny's truck, which happens to have stolen construction materials that Isaac hooked up. That's really fun. Of course, being in Vegas is always fun. Um, Even some of the other supporting characters, like Naomi, who is like a fellow wealthy woman who Amy knows, but Naomi starts to piece together the origin of the road rage incident. Thinks Amy's at the Amy is one of the drivers. That's all quite fun. Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed with this series. I think there's so much. It has so much to offer. In like 5.5 hours, however long it is, and yeah, Stephen Yun. I think people know at this point he's been on one. You know, some great supporting roles like in Sorry to Bother You and Nope last year. Of course, amazing in Minari, Oscar nominated. Steve Young's one of the best actors we have right now, and this is another great performance from him. He really imbues himself into Danny, and I think Danny is a character that's really hard to root for at times, but also really easy to root for at times too, and that just speaks to the writing. But I think the Young performance is awesome. Ali Wong is perhaps the biggest revelation, though, of the two. We know how good Stephen Young is in dramatic roles. We know that a lot less from Ali Wong, who, of course, is very famous for being a successful stand up comedian. She's acted before, but Always Be My Maybe was a rom com. There's comedic stuff to this, and of course, Ali is able to do some really funny line deliveries, and she has the mannerisms on her and expressions on her face. Like, she can handle the comedy when it comes up on Beef, but it was a really impressive dramatic turn from her as well. And it's awesome to see actors do something new like that, but especially someone like Ali Wong, who has not been a full time actor really at all. So hats off to them. Like I said, I thought the Dave Cho performance really comes out of nowhere. It's awesome. Yeah, man. Beef, highest possible recommendation. I hope this does well for Netflix. It's not going to be as well watched as The Night Agent, but it certainly deserves to be. And I would expect Netflix to campaign this heavily for the Emmys this fall. But yeah, let me know. How did you like Beef? Did it surprise you like it surprised me? What was your favorite part about Beef? There's so much to it. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Air, the new film starring Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, directed by Ben Affleck, about Nike's pursuit and, of course, successful signing of Michael Jordan to a signature shoe deal, which, of course, changed the lives of everyone involved. This is a new film, the first film from Damon and Affleck's Artist Equity production company project that they've started. Their new way of producing and financing films in the new world we live in terms of the film landscape. This is the first film from that group. Amazon is involved with this, notably giving it a full theatrical release before setting it to Prime. Very exciting. Yeah, this is another great film from Ben Affleck, who's really accomplished himself as a director at this stage. It's pretty undeniable. And I think it's just an absolutely great time, featuring excellent acting performances and a really compelling story. So even if you're not a sneakerhead, this is still a movie for you. If you don't even have to be a big basketball fan, I think it's just very dramatic and very enjoyable. You know, uh, Matt Damon, of course, plays Sonny Vaccaro, who was at Nike and one of the people who had the real conviction to pursue signing Michael Jordan. That's kind of what the story is about. Ben Affleck plays Phil Knight, the CEO of Nike at the time, founder of Nike, and it's another one of those recent, supporting performances from Ben Affleck where he leans a bit into the camp. It's very similar performance to me to how Ben Affleck was in The Last Duel, a movie that Damon and Affleck wrote, of course, where Affleck is not the star of the show, but he's just kind of stealing all the scenes he is in. And I think it's a great place for Ben to be, as he's seemingly really settled into being a director, but when he still wants to act, these like small little parts for him are really great, and he's quite effervescent as Phil Knight. I really loved him. But yeah, you have Sonny Vaccaro played by Matt Damon, and of course, Viola Davis, NBD, is Michael Jordan's mother, Dolores Jordan. And that's kind of like your two big characters. Of course, Jason Bateman is also in the film as a marketing exec at Nike. You have Chris Tucker. You have Chris Messina as David Falk, the NBA super agent who was Jordan's agent. That's kind of the big crew. I believe you have, was it Damon Wayans as Chris Raveling, who was also involved, as the basketball coach, and sorry, George Raveling. And I think what's kind of interesting about this film too, the story of it is how this all went down, how Nike was able to land Jordan, and they were of course the underdog. That's what's really fun about this movie is Nike was the underdog. They were not a dominant basketball player at all. Of course, Adidas and Converse ran the show at this time, and how this all went down. Who had the idea to go after Jordan? Was it Vaccaro? Was it Raveling? Was it a combination of the crew? All of that. There's a bit of a Phil Knight as well. Like there's a lot of I think people that want to take credit for this, and the movie for its own part at least acknowledges that there's other people's opinions on this. And it's a film that it doesn't really go into like the full extent of Nike history. It's really just about this core story, this foundational moment of Nike and Nike basketball and in Michael Jordan's life. Obviously, if you know anything about this story, Sonny Vaccaro does have a falling out with Nike and Phil Knight, but that's later in the story and is not in this movie. The Michael Jordan, his estate, Michael Jordan, of course, he's still alive, signed off on the telling of this film. He just really wanted to make sure that certain points were in the film. But it is kind of interesting that you have a like POV of the movie presented that Jordan did sign off on. He famously, Affleck and Damon have said this a lot at this point. Jordan wanted Viola Davis to play his mom, which obviously is like asking for the world when it comes to acting and casting, but he's able to pull that off. Um, and of course, Viola Davis, one of, if not the best actor in the world right now, and she's shockingly so tremendous as Dolores Jordan. I think really, I think doing a good job with this role because Air does, I think, a really interesting but smart choice where Michael Jordan isn't really a character in the movie. Like you barely see him, you don't see his face, you see his figure walking with his parents, but he's never really fully present on the screen. Um, the most dramatic stuff in the movie is when Sonny and Dolores are talking face to face or later on the phone. Those are the most dramatic moments and where the best acting is coming from. Of course, the best acting from Davis, but it's not really about Michael's opinions on things. It's really about more about his mother and how she helped drive this potential thing to go down, which is pretty cool. Chris Tucker's character Howard White, that was one of the things that Jordan was like, you have to make sure Howard White is in the film, which is pretty cool. I guess it would have been interesting to have a little bit more of Marlon Wayans as George Raveling, just because George Raveling to this day kind of disputes a lot of the account that's kind of presented here, but the movie at least acknowledges um, the discrepancy here. But ultimately, like I think this is just a really compelling, tight film. It's a lot of walk and talk and in the halls, in the office, but it's an underdog story. It's very relatable to people, and it's really fun to watch these characters win. You know, and also the Viola Davis phone call at the end with Sonny with Matt Damon really hits home the bigger picture that the Jordan family was looking for, where they of course pioneered this athlete equity stake, sales revenue share in the signature shoe, which was completely unheard of in the industry at the time, and how what that does for people, coming from nothing or coming from less than, of course, the strength of a billion-dollar corporation, for example. So I think all of that's like quite compelling, but the acting is so good, and the story is just really really tight. It's quite enjoyable. Hats off to Damon and Affleck for getting Amazon to release this theatrically. We know that Amazon is buying into that right now, and Apple is going to follow suit with full theatrical releases for their streaming movies. I think this, people are coming around to the truth that movies that are in the theaters and get that kind of marketing spend are just viewed with a higher, Q rating, I guess, than movies that go straight to streaming when it comes to the opinion of the average person. People care more about movies that were released in theaters. And not only that, but you have a chance to actually make some real tangible money from the box office before you put it on streaming, where the movie's ability to make money is a lot less clear and more nebulous. So I think Damon and Affleck understand that, and it seems like Amazon is on board with that now, which is great to hear, given how things have gone recently. So the business side of things is sound with this movie, rooting for it, of course. But let me know, how'd you feel about Air? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of the Super Mario Brothers movie, the animated film from Nintendo and Illumination. Man, it's been a long time coming, huh? We got Nintendo back with their hands on the wheel, tapping into all their famous characters, famous franchises, and actually making a film. Um, it's been a long time since the disastrous Mario Brothers film from 1993, which Nintendo was not involved in. So since then, more recently, Nintendo has decided that they finally realized, I guess, that IP is the name of the game. And when you have something as ubiquitous as Mario, you should probably act on it. And they did, because I think this movie, Super Mario Brothers movie, is a really faithful adaptation that, especially if you have if the audience has knowledge of the franchise going in, will have a lot of reference points to fans of Mario. The sound effects, the animations, the visuals, all of this will look very familiar to people that have played Mario games, whether that's Mario Kart, 3D platformer Marios, the OOG 2D platformer Marios, whatever it is. It's a very faithful presentation of Mario. And if that's what you're looking for, this movie is a success. This is still a kids' film. This is still a film that's 90 minutes with the most A to B, down the middle, straightforward plot, 3-act structure you've probably ever seen. It's very simple. But the audience is not really for someone looking at it too deeply. And if you think about it a little bit further, has Mario, as a franchise, in any of its iterations, ever been something that lends itself to a tremendous story? The answer is no. Mario is a husk. Mario is a archetype, a avatar for whatever Mario is up to in said game, whether he is an athlete, whether he is a adventurer, whether he is a medical doctor, whatever it is in the games, Mario can do it because that's what Mario is. He is just a blank slate. So you don't really need to color in too much to any of the characterization, I think, with this franchise. Just kind of lend itself to presenting Mario for what it is. And I enjoyed my time with it, but it's pretty obvious that it's a very simple, straightforward film. But I think that was Netflix or Nintendo's aim, was just to be very faithful to Mario, and that familiarity would be the selling point. You know, a lot's been made of the voice cast of this movie. Nobody an all-white cast, kind of surprisingly, I guess. But Chris Pratt is the voice of Mario. Charlie Day, Luigi, Aunt Anya Taylor-Joy, Princess Peach, Jack Black as Bowser, Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. That's kind of the core group. I think Pratt is totally fine as Mario. There's nothing really wrong with him. He doesn't really sound like Pratt either, so it's a better performance than I expected. He's not really in the way. I think at the end of the day, like, Mario is presented as like a Italian stereotype, and this movie really leans into the Italian stereotype of Mario. So, given all that, probably better if someone a bit more convincing and realistic than Pratt was the voice. Alas, that here was where we are. Rogan still kind of sounds like Rogan doing the voice of Donkey Kong, so that is what it is. It's fine. Anya Taylor-Joy, pretty good as Peach, but it definitely sounds like her more than it sounds like her playing someone else. And Charlie Day, I actually quite liked a lot as Luigi, but the star of the voice cast is Jack Black as Bowser, because he actually, via the rating, honestly, portraying Bowser as his, like, lover pursuing Peach, and not that that's out of nowhere when it comes to the games, but like, it gives Jack Black something to work with Bowser. And there's some really funny like musical moments where Black is or Bowser's singing at a piano or doing what he's doing, and Black gets to really channel like his tenacious D pass and just chew it up and have fun. And the Bowser stuff's pretty funny. Um, like I said, tons of like references and nods to stuff, like Kamek, the Magic Koopa. He is a solid supporting figure in all the Bowser scenes. Wasn't expecting that, for example. Um, you have all kinds of references to Mario Kart and all the platformers, and Diddy Kong Racing. The list goes on. It's a lot of stuff to recognize. Um, And yeah, I think it, like I said, it's a pretty faithful adaptation. Nothing really too deep about it. My favorite moment about the movie is probably the Mario Kart sequence where you literally watch Mario and Peach and Toad, voiced by Keegan Michael Key. You watch them like picking their carts, and they're literally spinning the dial like you do in the games to pick out all your like attachments, and your components. And while they're doing that, picking out their carts, ACDC's Thunderstruck is playing. It was actually a pretty hard moment. I thought that was pretty amusing. Um, I think the animation is very impressive. It looks very good. It looks very much like Mario. Illumination was probably a really smart choice to do this. Of course, Illumination, one of the most successful animation houses of the last decade, with Despicable Me and Minions, as well as Secret Life of Pets and Sing. They're dominating, and this is a really smart choice and big pickup for Illumination, because this film's going to be a huge hit, looking at like 150-ish million for the 5-day week opening weekend. This came out on Wednesday. Take advantage of Easter weekend holidays. Going to be one of the biggest movies of the year, certainly in that top 10, no doubt. Going to be a franchise. There's a post-credit scene that's very obvious and easy to predict, very reminiscent of the Sonic the Hedgehog post-credit scene we got recently for that first Sonic movie, where just teasing a character that you didn't see yet, that was on the mind of everyone watching the film, that they noticed they didn't see it yet, and then you can see an obvious reference in the post-credit scene to that character showing up in the sequel. So you can pretty much guess who that character is. I won't say it here, but yeah, Super Mario Bros. Movie. Ultimately, it's a kids' movie, but it's a faithful, competent adaptation, and another example of video game movies, video game projects turning over a new leaf in terms of being successful and having audience support behind them. Of course, HBO knocked out of the park with The Last of Us earlier this year. This is another example, though, of a film that is perfectly solid for what it is and has the fan support. So we've come a long way with video game movies, and with all the other projects in various stages of development, both in the film and TV front. We will be seeing a lot more video game films in the future. But let me know, how'd you feel about Mario? Did it do enough for you if you're an adult, despite the obvious kid nature of the film? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, and that does it for this week. Next week, I'm going to talk about the return of Barry for its final season on HBO, the return of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Prime for its final season as well, and also going to get into my XXL Freshman 2023 predictions. Excited to do that. And also going to talk about Suzume, the new anime blockbuster film from Makoto Shinkai, the modern master of anime, must watch. So excited to get into all that. So make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next week.